Hi guys, Swargula here. So I wanted to do a video about setting up a West Marches game using the Dungeon World Ruleset. I think that would be something very interesting. It's something that I've done a lot of time doing in the last while. Well, I have about 20 sessions or so down, and I think it's kind of an ideal way to go as far as running a West Marches game. So if you're out there saying, hey Sam, what is a West Marches game? Well, Matt Colville already did a beautiful video regarding like what exactly a West Marches game is. Of course, he does it with the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule set, I believe, at least partially, maybe not 5th editions, but Dungeons & Dragons in general. And I'm gonna go ahead and link his video in the doobly-doo underneath. Also in a West Marches game, it kind of is important that you use a central boring town for the basis of your adventure, as well as other heroes that are going to spend their time there in between adventure. And I'm gonna put a write-up there that Matt Colville also links to regarding why that's necessary and kind of how to do it. That's also in the doobly-doo. So you now might be asking yourself, Swarg, what do you know about West Marches games? Well, let me tell you. I started playing West Marches games while GMing 5th edition for the most part, and that kind of got me to writing a lot of tables, creating a lot of homebrew monsters, making a hex map, and doing a number of other things. I've probably played 3 different campaigns of West Marches games, all set around the same kind of idea, using a lot of the same tables and general things. And I also, of course, use the roleplay thing inspired by Silent Osiris. A lot of his tables, a lot of his creation and homebrew hacking rules of 5th edition I kind of carried over into my own game. This, of course, was tricky and kind of hard to do. It faltered in a number of different areas. I'm going to explain these areas right now. Dungeon World in general uses a lot of hacking. You need a lot of hacking to be able to simulate travel. You need a lot of hacking to generate encounters, generate items, generate things that happen. Dungeons & Dragons, especially in a West Marches setting, takes a lot of effort to be able to dungeon master and dungeon master well. You need a lot of tables to generate items, encounters, and things that happen, as well as have a hexographer map and know all the stat blocks while you're kind of going. You need to be able to homebrew quick, but doing things in a fair and quick way are actually sometimes dubious. So now I'm going to try to explain to you why I use Dungeon World over Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeon World has easier character creation. You can take someone who's never played the game through character creation in about 10 to 15 minutes. Dungeons & Dragons, that takes about an hour, hour and a half. When I was dungeon mastering a West Marches Dungeons & Dragons game, there were times when I was DMing a West Marches Dungeons & Dragons game where the character creation took longer than the character actually lasted in the wild. This is generally a bad thing. Dungeon World is set up by frame of mind. It's much easier to improv. Though Dungeons & Dragons kind of does the same thing and people will argue that it's easier to improv, Dungeon World has mechanics that are set to help you improv. Well, this does this. Oh, this is a reaction to this. Dungeons & Dragons doesn't really have that thing. Yes, you'll say there are reactions to that, but those are mechanical reactions. Those aren't necessarily roleplay reactions. You're never going to get a reaction to a persuasion check. And then my last reason is player creation. This sounds a lot like character creation, but it's vastly different. It creates a painless West Marches feel as far as GMing it goes. I'll explain more about what player creation is near the end of this video. So, if you've ever dungeon mastered a West Marches game, you might know that you need to front load a lot of work. You need to set up all your tables, all your items, all your monsters, all your factions, everything in the world around you, including dungeons, dragons. That was weird. So you might ask yourself, is Dungeon World any different? Do I still need to front load prep? It actually takes almost none. In about 5 minutes here, I'm going to explain to you why it's very short. So firstly, you need some sort of map. You need some sort of vague area that the players inhabit and to create a sort of space. And when I started, I scribbled down as many different region ideas that I could. I wanted to sort of include everything that I thought was interesting. So I created a floating mountain region, an animated dinosaur forest region, a cliffy coastline region with ancient ruins, boring plains region, a bog, a misty lake, and many, many more. These regions might not exist even during certain parts. I might get rid of some. I might add others in. I might just change the regions completely as time goes on. We'll see. Time affects all things. After I had created my master list of the regions that I wanted to include, about 10 or so, I might have already said the number, I'm not really sure. I gave each one about 2 to 4 tags. I kind of just loosely described what they are. And yes, that might have kind of been done in the name of the region itself, but I also gave them tags underneath that. The Misty Lake region is Misty. Who knew? Then I roughly organized each region in relation to each other in a vague kind of map, in a blob amorphous kind of area. Well, the mountains are very far. The plains are kind of over here to the north. The bog is to the south. This road kind of through here. And then in every West Marches game, I added a very boring town where no adventure can be found, no adventure ever happens, and everything is incredibly boring. And I plopped that in the center of as many regions as I could to give the players more access to doing whatever they wanted to do. So when I had started doing this, I used the Dungeon World Ruleset as written from the book. I had thought that I could do it by the book and improv my way out of it. Boy, was I wrong. I quickly realized after about 3 sessions or so that I needed additional moves to complement creating things. Moves that spawned events, moves that created interesting locations, moves that allowed for travel, moves that allowed for travel to become easier over time, moves that gave XP for characters that conversed about each other's character and backstories while in character, a move for finding food in the wilderness, a move for traveling through weather, and a move dealing with that weather, a move for managing provisions at the end of the night, a move for finding out what a character has been doing since their last adventure. I found all of these moves to be completely necessary. I did a lot of not looking at the camera right there. I hope it didn't freak you out. It freaks me out when I see anything like that. But to be fair, I'm also equally freaked out when people stare straight into the camera like I'm doing now. It's kind of like you're looking right into my heart. It's very uneasy. The player characters, combined with these moves, spawned everything that I needed. All of our story was spawned from these things, and all I had to do was connect the dots between the story and add a little hint of mystery. So now as we go, I have a vague map, and I kind of track where things are in relation as the party comes up across them. I track their location vaguely as we go. I let the players keep track of their own map, telling them that their map will be wrong, but I want them to know general locations of things in relation to each other. I think this is highly important in West March's game. I also keep notes on each region and everything that is inside of it, like the one that you can see here. I also keep each location large enough on its own note page. Towns, keeps, dungeons, and our starting village all have their own note page just like this. Lastly, I keep a page of general lore that I don't really use that much. It's basically filled with deities that kind of get referenced by the players and have been created by the players that much. Sometimes I'll add moves that have been spawned by me, like random plants, like a bag of books, but a bag of plants. Things like that. That doesn't really get used that much. I might change that into some form of other note-taking. So now that we have kind of set up our world, this is really all you need to do, by the way, we can talk about player creation. I generally sum up player creation as the stakes questions by the Powered by the Apocalypse Ruleset games. These stakes questions can easily be described as anything that you wonder about anything. How does our base camp town get its food? What problems does the tribe of goblins face? Will Riggs, the Warforged fighter, ever discover the fate of the collective consciousness of the Golem race? That was an inside tidbit for those of you watching who are friends of mine. The difference with player creation is we turn these questions to the players whenever we can. Let me explain what I mean. First and foremost, West March's games are mysteries. They reside in the adventure mystery column in the library. Much in the same way that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is an adventure mystery. I had to Google that just to be sure. It wasn't... Exploring, discovering dungeons and dragons, creatures, items, all mysteries to be solved. The GM makes the mysteries and leaves things to be discovered by the players. And everything that the GM doesn't feel is a mystery or should be a mystery can be basically player created. For example, your intrepid heroes are traveling through the noxious wastes, and the scout, who succeeds his scout ahead roll, decides to discover something. You, being the resourceful GM, consult your perilous wild tables. A few rolls will determine that they discover a water-based landmark. Oh, you give a confused look. Your mind is drawing a blank. A water-based landmark in the noxious wastes? You have no idea. See, a lot of DMs and players come from a Dungeons & Dragons background or are part of the culture of it, where the DM knows everything and has an answer for everything. The name of each month in Gnomish, the inches of rainfall on the Astorial Plain during spring. But GMing in Dungeon World and Powered by the Apocalypse games in general is much different. They basically tell your players to go fuck themselves when they ask you these sorts of questions. Giving your players the middle finger is probably one of my favorite things. Especially when they deserve it, let's be real. Because some players are dicks. But most of this information is wildly unimportant. Does it matter how much rain the Astoria Plains get during spring? Unless it affects the story, that answer is no. So this information is best summed up by a phrase that I like to use all the time. This information is unimportant until it becomes important. And that's an entirely different concept that I can talk about in a different video. So now, let's get back to our example. You rolled on your water-based landmark, but you're at a loss. Your mind falls blank. The water-based landmark itself doesn't do anything. All we know now that you've rolled on it is that it exists. That's what you rolled and it exists and that's it. You, the GM, don't know anything more about it. More information is unimportant until it becomes important at this current time. So you're sitting at your table or your screen looking at four wide-eyed people who are all looking to you for an answer. What happens next, they want to know. What did they roll, they whisper. Is this the Countess we've been looking for all along? But as you look from each player, you see four players. But in this point in time, they could each be the GM. You just happen to be the GM. This just happens to be run by you for some reason. But I'm sure all four of your players could be running this game as well. Dungeon World is not that hard, and most games in general are not that hard. So with the power of togetherness, some heart, love, earth, and water, and fire, is this a reference? Am I referencing here? Am I doing pop culture right? You turn to your co-GMs at this moment, and you say, you all see a constructed water-based landmark that has been long since ruined. It plunges out of the noxious wastes like a sore thumb. Tell me what you see. And then the player starts to describe it. They start to give nuances about it. And at any point in time, you can roll them back should they go too much. Should they spawn a blade of +3 damage that can kill the universe, perchance? If they start to ruin the narrative or the fun of the game that you've already described. Unless you're playing a game of superheroes that can destroy and eat worlds, which sounds pretty cool. Somebody make that a game. World Eaters 2017. I
I feel like I just committed some sort of YouTube faux pas. My bathroom door has been open like this whole time, and I'm not about to reshoot everything that I just shot. So, So 4 minds being better than 1 create a brilliant idea, and you get to use that, and that now exists in your narrative. They created something awesome that you get to use. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. That's a quote by Banksy, I think. Now, they've created your mystery for you. What is this water-based landmark? Why is it here? What did they create? Why does it eat worlds? You're left stress-free, and your players feel more attached to your world because they have a direct influence over it and a creative control. They aren't just musicians playing in an orchestra. They're jazz artists, each getting to take a solo. This is good. Do this. Also play or listen to jazz. Now all that's left to do about our mysterious water landmark that they have since created is attach things to it and maybe see if there's any mysteries or some things that come out of it. And you can do that much later in the session should it come up. Connecting things and creating mysteries and kind of leaving the blanks is a little bit trickier, and I might address that in a different video as well. Generally, it's considered under pacing whether an event here might happen, if you can turn up the danger at this point in time, if you think it's time for an encounter, or if you're feeling a little trigger happy and you need to kill someone. A little bit of drama. This will generally happen if a roll comes up cockwise, where an encounter will happen. I just said cockwise. Where an encounter will happen at the water-based landmark and a creature comes there to attack the party. It can be attached to the water-based landmark in some way, like it's its lair or something. But until that happens, it can kind of just be what the player said it was. So a combination of loose world building, additional Dungeon World moves, asking your players to solo the story, connecting their creations together as much as you can, and leaving things unknown to yourself and the players to discover at a later point. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember 2 things. Things are unimportant until they're important, and West Marches is an adventure mystery. Also jazz. Jazz is great. Who doesn't love jazz? So wrapping up, you can get into any one of my West Marches games in the Discord link below. It's pretty easy. Would you run a West Marches game any differently? Tell me in the comment section below if you wish. Otherwise, don't. It's fine. My happiness isn't tied to the comment section. If you guys like this video, I might start making more running the game videos, as well as something that I want to do is reply to other videos from great GMs that I look up to, like Adam Coble or Matt Colville or Matt Mercer or the other great GMs out there, because I think that I've been doing this for quite a while and have a degree of understanding that a lot of people, maybe probably necessarily my age, don't. Wrapping up, I'm probably wrong about all of this, but remember to be awesome to each other. I'm Swargula, out.